Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great segment here of Sound Mind. The Bible says, Jesus shares that I pray that you prosper in all things and be in health as your soul prospers. And we don't believe that that's just our bodies. We believe that's our minds and our hearts. And with the vision of our founder, Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr., shout out to the pastor. He created an opportunity in a space where we're able to talk about those elements of our mind and our heart. And we have another great segment today. So we want to say thank you first for tuning in with us. It's been amazing the support you've given us. Please, if you haven't done it already, share it with a friend, family member, start a watch party. We want to engage with you and share this vibrant information we have today. We have a special guest today. I've heard her work is amazing. She is phenomenal. Dr. Tracy Knighton, more affectionately known as Dr. T, is a licensed professional counselor. Raised in Albany, Georgia. She had to learn this amazing word we're going to talk about really soon, transition, in a phenomenal way. From being told that she wasn't smart enough to go to college, to now owning Nova, which stands for No One Ventures Alone. It's a counseling and consulting services with her husband. It started with only 2 employees, and now they have over 40 employees, and they work all over the state of Georgia, helping individuals and adolescents work with trauma, relationship issues, conflict, grief, and loss. There's so much more I can say about her, but I want to welcome her now. Dr. T, welcome to Sound Mind.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy. We're going to have a great time. So, Dr. T, let's just jump right into this. Tell us a little bit about the work you do.
So I am a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia. South Georgia is where our office is located. And I do a little bit of everything when it comes to the mental health. We do counseling, we do coaching, we do consulting. We also work with families who are in need, families who are in crisis, families and individuals who may have experienced trauma. In addition to that, my husband is a full-time pastor. Shout out to St. James Baptist Church, but he also loves going into the prisons, and he has a prison ministry. So he takes what he and I talk about as far as therapy and motivation and inspiration, and he also goes into the prison, and that's where his ministry is as well.
Wow. Phenomenal work. So I want to talk because I've heard that you are the transition guru. And I want to say during this time of COVID-19, and we're in the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to deal with this topic of transition. So I want to start off our conversation by saying there's a hymn that says time is filled with swift transition. Like everybody in their life, we all experience some form of transition. But I want you to start to share some light on, do you feel like we are aware and take the time to really embrace transitions that come?
I think the challenge is that we use change and transition interchangeably, and they are not the same thing.
All right, let's go ahead and start since we're already there. Walk us through those two differences.
Yeah, so change has to happen before transition happens. Okay, so the foundation that I want to give today is that of a butterfly and a caterpillar. So when you think of a caterpillar is one that's close to the ground, crawls on the ground, crawls on things. And before he can transition to the butterfly, a change has to take place. First of all, he knows internally that something has happened, that something is different. So he has to change what he sees, he has to change what he eats, and then he has to change his location. He has to elevate. You'll never catch a butterfly's cocoon on the ground because that's not where his change takes place. He knows that when he emerges from his cocoon, that what he once used to crawl around on the ground, which are legs, he won't need them for what he's going to be. He's going to be a butterfly, so he won't need those same types of legs. So in order to transition, he's got to change from crawling on the ground to elevation, which you'll always find a cocoon either on the backside of a leaf of a tree or on a tree itself, but you will never find a cocoon on the ground.
Whew. So I just listen. I think somebody already needed to hear that change has to happen before transition. So as
Mhm.
we are like COVID-19, we were not prepared for it. We
We
have
were not.
had a lot of things happen. And when you talk about transition, there are jobs that have been lost. There are family members and friends that have died, and we've not been able to bury our loved ones the way we wanted to. The reality of our life has had a large transition. So, what can we say, even in traumatic situations like this, to people and how they can handle these changes and transitions?
Right. So when it comes to grief, the way that we've always grieved before is no longer. Um, our society taught us how to grieve. We grieve in groups. So when you think of the funeral itself, and at the end of the funeral, we're at the cemetery with the body there. That actually begins the grief process for those of us in Western society. That actually begins the grieving process. It's not the fact that the person has left, because we're still pretty much in shock once they say that this person is gone, but it's at the graveside, it's at the part where we see the casket that we begin to have to change our thought process that this person is no longer there. And that's where the transition takes place after we change our minds and the fact that this is actually what's happening. You have people right now who are grieving the loss of their jobs. You have students who are grieving the loss of graduation and not being able to participate in that. All these 13 years that they've worked for this event that's never going to take place. So we have to change the way that we see things now, because this change that we're experiencing with COVID is helping to transition us into what our new normal will look like. Our new normal will look like us walking around with masks and this distance that we have with each other. Our new normal will look like we might not be able to hug each other, when we see each other out in different places. Our new normal may be that we have to strategize, how business is going to look going forward, how church is going to look forward going forward. But the change that COVID brought, the physical change that COVID brought, people getting sick, people had this quarantine, people had to think differently about how they were going to do business and how they were going to be in their homes. That change is bringing about the transition of what newness is going to look like when we emerge. So that's why change has to take place before transition.
So walk me through how you would assist someone, or what we can say to someone who doesn't like change. If change is necessary before transition, what what do you do if the person or someone, or even myself, we're not ready for the change?
Listen, change is going to happen whether you like it or not. Change
That,
happens
that,
physically whether you like it or not. Let's be honest. If you've been stuck at home these past few weeks and you've been in the refrigerator, change has happened.
I
Physically,
can't get out
change
that
has happened.
refrigerator, Dr. T. Dr. T, I can't get out that refrigerator. It's been tough. I had to put a
Listen, you are
post-it
not the
note
same
there
way
just
you
to
were
pull.
when all of this started. So you just have to
Right.
be honest. Change has happened. Now, with that change, you have to transition. You might have to start working out a little bit more. The mindset and the behaviors and the actions have to change first. And then we begin the transition of looking at things differently. We begin the transition of living in a different normal, so to speak. So those people who don't like change, I just have to be honest with you. Change is going to happen whether you like it or not. The seasons
It's
are
gonna
going to
happen.
change. Day into night is going to change. You know, May 12th is going to change into May 16th. It's going to change into June and July and August. So change happens whether we like it or not. COVID, even though COVID came in without invitation, COVID changed how we did our everyday lives. So change is inevitable. It's just
It,
how we begin to position ourselves to engage with the change at a different level.
that's good, Dr. T. That's good. I'll be honest with you. We were talking about it before we got on here. You were telling me about the shirt you have. Tell us what that shirt says again.
The shirt says, it's okay to have Jesus, but you need a therapist too. So you need
Right.
Jesus and a therapist.
Jesus and a therapist. And I just want to plug that in there. I'm glad you got Jesus, but make sure you get a therapist. So help us through how we sensationalize sometimes our faith and our walk and use that as a coping mechanism to not want to accept change, to do the work to get us to transition.
So here's a tough pill to swallow. And I know this is going to have some of the, yeah, exactly. I know it's going to have some of the saints a little bit upset, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm a big girl and I can handle it. So here's what I'm
Come
going to have to
on.
say to that. So here's the thing, and here's that hard pill to swallow. Here's what I'm going to say. And if the saints are going to be upset about it, it's okay. I'm a big girl. I can handle it. The Bible says faith without works is dead. So the faith part is what we believe God to do, what he's able to do. He's God, he's all sovereign, and he can do it all. The works part belongs to us. It's the work that we do that brings about the foundation of that faith. So trusting God to do God's part and what he does. But the works part is us believing. The work part is us going to the therapist and doing the work that the therapist gives to us. The work is making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. See, all of that goes together. We're spiritual beings, but we're also emotional and physical. So just as you go to the doctor to take care of something that's physically wrong, you go to your pastor or your bishop or your priest to take care of something that you may have spiritually that you need help with. Who do you go to when it's time for something that's mentally not right with you, that you need the mental health care? So that's where the mental health piece comes in. Faith without works is dead. It's a three peg stool. So we are mind, body, and spirit, which means that you can't ignore the mental side of all of this. You can't ignore it. You go to the doctor, he said you have high blood pressure, you take your insulin, but they also give you something when they give you that insulin. They give you a life plan. They tell you tell you, in addition to taking this insulin, I want you to start working out. I want you to start eating right. So now you have a blueprint for what the change needs to take place. And in that change, you transition to being able to manage your diabetes or getting rid of it. Does that make sense?
That's that's good. That's good. And I think that's going to help a lot of us, even because we put a lot of, we sensationalizing. Let's just be honest. We're already out there. We like to have these super spiritual explanations, and they're not always promises from God. God didn't tell you that this is going to happen. You're going with the flow of what's happening. So your part is, like you said, trusting and going to the therapist, like working through that. So I want to ask a question. Some of us have had life traumas, things we bottled up, we have not moved past, and we've just started back moving as if nothing happened. What's the danger in not dealing with that process of the change, which stunts then the transition?
Yeah. So think of it as a beach trip. I love the beach. I'm a water baby. I go to the beach. Listen, Destin is only 3 hours from me, and if I could live there, I would. Shouts out, I'm putting that in the atmosphere, so it will, I'm pulling it down. But think of it this way: when you go to the beach, there's a flag out there. I forget what the color of the flag is, but it's a flag that's specifically a color for rip currents. And a rip current is simply this: it's a wave that's comes forward to the beach, but underneath that is a rip current that runs, that will literally swallow you and take you out to sea if you don't know how to fight against it. And so when there are rip currents, now on the surface, everything looks good. The beach is inviting, the waves are coming in, people are enjoying themselves. It's a sunny day, the wind is blowing, but underneath the surface is this real dangerous rip current that could take you out and swallow you and move you away from the shoreline without you even knowing it. So if you think of grief this way. I'm a beach person. I love the beach. I enjoy going to the beach. The beach is only 3 hours away from me. So I like to give this analogy when we talk about grief. When you go to the beach, I forget what flag it is, but there's a flag that the lifeguards will have up that specifically deals with rip currents. And on the surface, the water looks beautiful. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out. The waves are coming in. The wind is blowing, and it's just a beautiful day on the beach. And there's this flag that flies that lets you know that there are rip current. And here's the deal with a rip current. The rip current is always underneath the surface. So even though the water looks beautiful on the top, even though what we see from the shoreline is beautiful on top, there's this rip current that's underneath the surface. And it's very dangerous because you can't really see a rip current. But what ends up happening is once you get in the water and you get too deep and you go too far out, that rip current can take you under. And what it does is it takes you away from the safety of the shore. So you can be out there enjoying yourself in this beautiful water, and then all of a sudden you get caught in a rip current. And unless you know how to swim in that rip current, that it will end up taking you under or taking you out so far away that no one can see you and you're away from the safety of the shore. So that's a lot like how grief is if we don't learn how to deal with it, if we don't get the help that we need to be able to transition appropriately, if we don't get the help that we need to be able to heal from the loss of that we have experienced, be it the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a marriage, the loss of a child, if we don't get the help that we need, what ends up happening is we end up drowning in that rip current, because on the surface everything is good.
Woo! We end up drowning in the rip current. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, and are there signs of what that looks like? So if we have people around us, or even if with ourselves, are there ways we can identify if there's possibly a change that we weren't really willing to accept and to walk through, and we've been submerged by a rip current? Are there any signs for that?
Sure. So I give this illustration a lot to the little people when they come to me for counseling. I enjoy working with little people because they're just so innocent and so honest. And so I give them the example of this. If you think of an iceberg, and I use a lot of illustrations because people understand illustrations. Words are difficult sometimes, but I give the little people this illustration that if you think of an iceberg, the top part of the iceberg that we see, that's anger. But underneath that iceberg are a whole bunch of different other emotions that we really can't quite put words to. You might be grieving. You might be sad. You might feel trapped. You might feel lonely. You might feel distrustful. You might be scared. You might be fearful. But what ends up happening is all of those emotions that we feel, when people see those emotions, they see anger. Really and truly, there's
Mm,
something underneath that anger that causes that anger that people see above the surface. So what ends up happening is a lot of people, when we become adults, we still walk around with anger. And anger is simply an emotion that happened early on that we never learned how to manage. So I may have trauma in my past as a child. Let's say, for instance, my mom it's mental health month. So let's say my mom had unchecked mental health issues that she never went and got counseling for, that she never went and got medication for. And as a result, she was very abusive to me. Ended up growing older, I never learned how to manage my emotions. I never learned relationships that were trustworthy because I never learned how to trust my mom because she had mental health issues. So that's a trauma that has followed me. And now, as I can't seem to hold on to relationships, I can't seem to be able to express myself when I get upset. So, in being able to express myself and my expectations, I can't do that. And as a result, I get angry, I get violent because that's the only way I know, because that's all I'm a child. So those are the things that you see from childhood to adulthood. So when we don't deal with our feelings of loss and grief, and when we don't deal with our feelings of sadness, and when we don't learn how to navigate that, what ends up happening is those feelings transition with us. They don't bring up that we got to change. The change is whatever happened to us at childhood, but now we're this adult and we have these emotions that we don't know how to manage. We don't know how to regulate.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I, y'all, she is just messing me up today. But you know, Dr. T, it's real, and I love the fact that you just shared with us something that you share with your young individuals whom you counsel and help, and just a way. And I want to just put this out here: if the young people need counseling, so do we. And because there's some of us are still in our younger person trauma trap place and haven't outgrown it. Dr. Margie Gill talked to us about that last week. And so what I want to now move to is just a lot. You've helped us with so much. What I want to kind of go to now is, what are some key ways or techniques we can work through change and transition for those of us out there that we're trying to cope with this new reality of COVID-19, trying to deal with our worlds and just what they are? What are some techniques that we can practice?
Sure. First thing and foremost, this is always what I tell people: it's okay not to be okay. Let's just start there. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be in your feelings right now. It's okay to feel some type of way, like my young folks say. It's okay to be upset right now. It's okay to be sad right now. It's okay to not be okay. So let's just start there. That's the foundation. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay for us not to have an answer. It's okay for us to admit that we don't have all the answers. That's the start of it. The second thing I want to remind people of is that we are mind, body, and spirit. So you've got to take care of the mind, you've got to take care of the body, you got to take care of the spirit. You take care of the mind by talking to people. You take care of the mind by making sure you guard what goes in. One of the things I love to do with people when they come to me for counseling, if they're particularly millennials, I make them go on a social media fast. I take them off of social media. Yep, I know.
Why? Can you walk us through the why of that?
Yes, social media has its place. It's good and bad. Social media, when it particularly comes to millennials and those of us who may be dealing with anxiety, those of us who may be dealing with grief and loss, what do you mostly see when you're looking at social media? You see people's highlights, you see people's good times, you see what people want you to see. Okay, so with that, what ends up happening is that we start comparing ourselves to what we're seeing. And so the filter of who we are and who we want to create ourselves to be doesn't match up to what we're seeing in social media. So I take people off social media. I make them go on a fast. And that helps me determine how much they're ready to go through this therapeutic process with me. Because if they can't do what I'm asking them to do by taking themselves off social media, they might not be ready for me yet. That's the first thing. The second thing I do as well is I make them go out and exercise. I make them get that fresh air. That's really, really important, because when we start to change what we see begins to change. And so if you're constantly looking around your house and you're seeing those things that remind you of what was, and you're not getting the fresh air and you're not getting out and about, and vitamin D is very good for us, even though we are the darker hue and we have a lot more melanin in our body. Right. So the vitamin D is really important. Going out and working out. We're not talking about going out and running a marathon. I simply want you to go outside for a 15-minute walk or a 30-minute walk just to get the sunshine on the body. The body needs to feel different from where it was. And when you begin to feel different, the vibration of your body, believe it or not, that physiologically begins to change you. In addition to changing your surroundings of going out and getting some exercise, I also want you to watch what you're eating. I think that's really important. A lot of times we don't think about the chemicals that we're eating and the things that we're eating that are not good for us. So are we incorporating more fresh fruits and fresh vegetables? Are we limiting the meat? And believe it or not, I know there are meat lovers out there. God bless you all. I'm a meat eater too, but I'm learning that the more meat that I limit out of my diet, the better I'm beginning to feel because I'm not taking in all of those hormones. So I limit social media. I make sure that I go out and get the exercise and get the vitamin D that I need. My body needs it. My body wants it. My body craves it. Exercising is good for us. It releases those good hormones and those good endorphins that makes you feel good. The same endorphin that's released when you are being physically intimate and in love is the same hormone that's released when you're exercising. So go out and get you some exercise. In addition to that, take yourself off social media for a few days. And more importantly, start journaling. Gratitude is a great way to help just remind you of whose you are and who you are and what you still have to offer to others.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good, Dr. T. Dr. T, I just think that, with what we're going through COVID-19 and how we're transitioning back into our realities, I think a lot of times that it's easy to just brush it off. And I'm so glad you started this conversation off with expressing us to one, the difference between change and transition, and telling us that change is step one to that transition period. And then those steps that you offered us with disconnecting from social media, going outside, getting exercise, changing what we're eating and bringing in, and all of those aspects are they seem so simplistic, but when you think about it, if we start to do those things, we can definitely see the change that we need. So, Dr. T, with the experience that you have between children and adults, what would you say the difference is when it comes to this conversation of transition?
I think children do a better job of it because they don't have the baggage that weighs them down. They don't, believe it or not, children are more resilient than we give them credit for. And the logic part that we think of as adults, when we start thinking about, oh, change and transition and all this, we start logically thinking about it. Whereas kids are like, okay, I got this. You want me to do what? Okay. Of course, it's causing some anxiety because the children's lives have been changed from going to school every day to being at home every day, and maybe having these schedules and everything that they once had in school that they no longer have. And that was one of the things I shared with parents when all of this started, is that you've got to create this same schedule at home that the kids had at school. Kids are used to rules, rituals, and routines, and they also are used to responsibility as well. That's what happens in the school setting. So that needs to also be mirrored at home. So I think it's a lot easier for children to change and eventually to transition than it is for adults because we bring baggage with us that children don't necessarily have yet.
That's good. That's good. That's good. And so, as we are helping our children transition, even during this time, they need a schedule, they need a routine.
Absolutely. They're used to routines, they're used to rituals, they're used to roles, used to responsibility. So that doesn't go out the window just because mom becomes a teacher now. Mom can have a schedule up on the refrigerator that school starts at 9, we get a snack at 10:30, we go to lunch at 12, we get reading at 1, and then school is out at 3. But that needs to be posted on the refrigerator so that the kids can see this, so the expectation is set. This is what our schedule looks like.
Yep. That's so good, Dr. T. So first, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of our Sound Mind segment today. We have been tremendously blessed. My favorite part has been you will never see a cocoon on the ground. You always have to elevate and go up high. Now, that has just messed me up. First, if we want to get in contact with you, we want to connect with you, how do we do that?
Sure. I am on Facebook under Nova Counseling and Consulting Services. I am on the gram. My daughter and friends have finally got me on the gram. I know.
Turn up.
So on the gram, we are Dr. T _ Knighton. And then, of course, my website is www.novacc.net.
Awesome. So, Dr. T, before you leave us, can you give us a nugget, something to part with in this conversation of transition?
Sure. Here's what I want to leave with people. Don't beat yourself up. It's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to ask for help. That's what I want people
Mm,
to be empowered to do. Know that it's okay not to be okay, and that it's always okay to ask for help.
mm. That's really good. Thank you so much, Dr. T, for being our guest today on Sound Mind. Thank you so much, our viewers, for viewing us on this segment. We love your outreach and your support that you've been giving us. Continue to share this stream, this segment with your friends and family. Tag somebody who you know needs to hear this message. It is okay to not be okay, and it is okay to ask for help. Until next time, my name is Bryant, Collier, your host. We love you. Take care. And above all things, remember, the sound mind matters.